don't you tell us first, tell people who you are and what you do, Bruce?
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. And my name is Bruce Hurd. You can see it on my Zoom picture. And I'm a retired Air Force officer, retired Air Force pilot. Spent 30 years doing that, and then I was a software development program manager at a company here in San Diego. About 5 years ago, I decided to go part time with them because I wanted to be a writer, and I spent the next few years thinking about writing, kind of piddling in it. But then I got, and my wife pointed this out to me. My wife Anya pointed out that there was a weekend writing retreat that I could take part in, and that got me going. A year and a half after that, I completed my book. I published it in September of last year, or rather 2019, and it became an Amazon #1 bestseller. I was really pleased with that. So I started going. I went on a book tour. Not well. I went to different places to do book signings. To calling it a tour would be a little bit too grand, but I went to different areas, both here in San Diego and elsewhere, to to do book signings. And what I found was that most people were not asking me about my book. Most people that I talked to at the book signings weren't asking me about that. They were asking me about the process of writing my book. How did I write? How did I go about writing it? What were the steps involved? What about editing? What about publishing? All of those different things. So I saw a real need um, to start a book writing service, book writing retreat, I should say. I don't write the books for people, but I run a book writing retreat based on the model that I used or that I was part of. But I've expanded that. So I offer one on one coaching to first time authors to get them to go through not only the creation process for their book, but also revisions, expansion, editing, and publishing their book. So I take them through it on a one by one basis, and I absolutely love it. I mean, it's fun. I love meeting these people, and Simone has this wonderful course. One of the things that she taught me in the course was that I can't be everything to everybody, and I need to focus my market. And so I have focused my market on veterans. Although people in my retreats are from a wide, men and women are from a wide variety of backgrounds, and they're writing on all sorts of different things, not only their own memoirs or their own stories, but I'm working with a gentleman who's writing a historical fiction novel, and it's just fascinating. So that's where I'm at right now. I have this writing retreat service that I'm offering. That's my sales pitch, or that's what I offer to people. That and the upsell or the post retreat is the one-on-one coaching, and that's where I am. So that's who I am too.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love how you really were open to see, that what really people were looking for, which is something that you end up loving doing. I love that about you, Bruce. Now tell us, what were you struggling like when like January came and you came to my workshop? What were you struggling with in your marketing before you got into the academy?
Okay, so yeah, excellent question, because I was basically struggling with most everything. I had ideas about what I wanted to do, and where I wanted to go, and who I wanted to approach regarding my service, and have a general thoughts about how to go about doing it, but no coherent plan, no specifics. Didn't have any of the tools that I really needed to be able to do this type of thing. So it was overwhelming. I just didn't know what to do next. Yeah, I was kind of doing random things that I thought, someone would give me someone would give me advice on, hey, you should do this. So I kind of dabble in that. It wasn't, it wasn't coherent. It wasn't organized. That's what I struggled with the most. I wanted I wanted a plan, and I wanted someone to help me go through this plan in a way where I would not be overwhelmed or feel overburdened by what I was doing. And I had actually been to a marketing person previously, and she's brilliant. She knows her stuff, and it was just like a 2 month program where and we met more than a few times, and it was great. I mean, she was really knowledgeable, but basically it was a drinking from a fire hose for 2 months. And at the end of it, I had these great materials, but I couldn't really remember it in the sense that, okay, what do I do first? And what was this about? And it just it was not at a pace where I could take it step by step and build on what I was creating. It was kind of a giant dump in, on my lap. And there I was with all this wonderful material, but I didn't know how to implement what I was given. So that's when I saw Simone, and we talked about it, and her program seemed to be exactly what I wanted, and it was all that and more. It was just fantastic.
So I love that you say that, but so you in the beginning when I presented and I said, you know what, it's going to take time. It's going to take 11 months for us to finish this. Weren't you afraid at all? Like, oh my gosh, this is too long.
Actually, I had the exact opposite reaction because because you offered a consistent 11-month program. I felt that, okay, here's someone who's going to take the time to spend the time with me and to go through all this stuff. And if I have questions, we can get them answered right then, and then we can move on. 11 months was the opposite of looking like an obstacle to me. It's like, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it right. And I'm going to feel good about it. And I'm going to understand what's going on. I didn't want you doing things for me because I wanted to understand it, because even after an 11-month course, I'm going to need to understand what I have to do and why I'm doing it. And going at it from a very methodical, step-by-step perspective, I understand about all these different steps that I need to take. And not only did you take me through this entire building process, but you also emphasized what I would need to do to keep up with it, so that I could carry it on beyond the 11 months. And it was great in that you were very clear in what you presented. And one of the things that I really liked about your program, among the many things, one of the things I liked the most about your program was you gave such wonderful handouts and examples for all of the different things. I mean, you had a handout for every week of the 11-month program, which is great. But not only was it an example, a handout talking about what we discussed, it was also the how-to. How do you go about doing this? Here's a template for creating an email that you'll send out to people who are potential podcast hosts that are going to want you on their program. I mean, that was great. I had no idea how to even go about doing that. I mean, we're all very smart people, and I am as well. We're intelligent, and eventually I could have figured out some of these things, but I didn't even know where to start. And there's a balance between how much time you spend figuring stuff out, and it's easy to get discouraged and just drop it and move on to something else, or not even do it in the first place. So this was really good in that regard. So yeah, I kind of a long answer. You know me, I talk forever. Kind of the long answer is that 11 months was not it didn't, I wasn't intimidated by it. I was excited by it. I was excited that I was going to be able to do it for that long. And I knew that you would provide a very thorough program, and that's what worked out.
That's so good to hear. I never heard you say that and that those words. Thank you, Bruce. Now there are some people here that are contemplating getting in the academy. What advice would you give for people that want to join? Talk about some, you know, things that you think that they must do when they join.
Well, first of all, it's the schedule. It, what eventually transpired with Simone and me is that we kind of settled into a regular weekly meeting at like 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. That's when we do it. It was just easier that way rather than try to pick out different days during the week. We got into a little bit of a rhythm associated with it, which was great. That's what I wanted. And we just kind of, I didn't even know if we ever decided on that. That's just what kept happening. And by the way, Simone is really flexible about stuff. If those times that I needed to change, she was really flexible about it. We did it and all that stuff. The advice I give, getting back to your question, the advice I give is to be open to the process, because there were things that I was doing and I wasn't doing them the right way, or not the, there's not, I wasn't doing them wrong. There's just a better way to do them. Let me put it that way. And Simone helped me work through a better way of doing it. And on frequent occasions, I had to change what I already had and go with her way and do the work to do that. And I'm glad I did, because she's an expert. She knows what she's doing. What I did was kind of a, this looks about right, and I did it. And then she showed me a better way to do it. I needed to be open to do that, and I'm glad I was. And the ego in me, or the, oh my gosh, I don't have time to redo this other thing that I did, I had to fight that a little bit, but I'm glad I did. So that's big advice that I give. Also, I would recommend, it's easy, and over an 11-month period. Yeah, it is a fair amount of time, but over an 11-month period, it's easy to, and life interjects itself, of course. It's easy to fall behind on the tasks for each week, and there are the way Simone structured it was that there were 1 week breaks every couple of months or so there was time to catch up, and that was really useful. The advice I give for this wonderful 11-month program is to keep up with what's going on. You start with it, and don't put things off to the next week or figure you're going to catch up, because it's not overwhelming. It's not an overwhelming amount of work each week at all. It's a couple hours, maybe. Some weeks wasn't even that. Some weeks it was more, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was bite-sized chunks, and it's a lot easier if you just keep up with it, because there were times when I got behind for various reasons, and then it caused me to have to work extra hard, and then I'm trying to remember stuff that was from 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's just easier to keep up with it. That's some advice I give.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how do you see now, Bruce, your presence online, your knowledge of how you're doing? So how are things now for you?
They're excellent. They're excellent. Part of my big business plan when we started was I was going to offer these retreats in person, face to face, and that quickly went by the wayside, like everything in many of our lives. So, I'm not surprising anybody by that. So in some ways that slowed things down, but at the same time, I was able to build more of an online presence, and things are going really well. I've been a guest on veteran-oriented podcasts, national podcasts. I've spoken to veterans groups, including a large one in Washington, D.C. I was their featured speaker talking about my book writing program, and I haven't told you about this, Simone, but I am going to be a speaker at San Diego State University coming up in March. So I'm excited about that too. These things wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been out there and letting people know about who I am and making myself available and offer. And I'm speaking for free now, which is what I want right now. I'm not charging anybody. The whole idea is to get out there and get people to know me. And you've given me some really good tips as to uh, creating a structure for what I'm offering and some of the priorities. And I remember at one point, you and I talked about how much to charge people for the one-on-one coaching, and what we agreed upon, or what you convinced me of. And it wasn't that, didn't take me that much convincing, but was to offer a low price for the first group to get people who are going to finish the program, because it takes months to write a book and publish it. And that way I would have success stories, and that's working out fantastically. I've got two writers, one a veteran, one not, who are just on the verge of publishing, and they're going to be my first two big success stories. And a lot of that comes from, and you and I have talked about this all the way along the line. A lot of that comes from the advice, the wonderful advice you gave me as to how to price it, how to approach it, and what could come next. And I'm looking forward to coming next. I'm looking forward to holding up two books and saying, this is what can happen to you if you're in my program. And I'm really proud of the two writers. They're just wonderful. One of the gentlemen has Parkinson's disease, so he actually required a little extra help, but it's a labor of love. I mean, these guys are just fantastic, and I enjoy them. And there's others in the pipeline as well, but these are the first two out of the
Good.
chute. So anyway, that's where I am.
So good. So, so good.